Hey everybody, tonight I wanted to talk about who I think is going to be a very important witness for the prosecution at the Bryan Kohberger trial. Now, if you've been following this case from the beginning, you might be surprised at who this person is, because at one point, according to a lot of the people in the public, this person was actually considered a suspect. Now, one thing I enjoy doing when I'm looking at a case like this is circling back to the beginning of the timeline. I like to review old video footage, witness statements, old news articles that came out, especially things that came out immediately after the crime occurred, before things started to get diluted and covered up. It's always fun when you find something back then that, had you known what you know now, you could have really made more sense of what was going on. Now, many of you will recall that early on in the case, before we had a suspect, there were a lot of names being thrown around in the public on who could have done it, including Jack D. Remember the hoodie guy, Jack S. We had Adam involved, and then there were a couple of neighbors that were witnesses as well. One of those neighbors, Jeremy Reagan, went into the police on his own to give them his DNA because there was so much talk going around on if he had done the crime or not. Remember, this was early on in the case, and the public was really scrutinizing everybody as a possible suspect. Now, I'll admit I did look at one of those neighbors very closely, although I never did really think he would have done the crime. Enon Harsh really stood out to a lot of people because he sort of put himself in the spotlight during this case. He started doing media appearances, he created a YouTube channel, started posting, and it seemed he was trying to leverage the attention he was getting to generate some sort of fame, and that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Back when I was looking at everybody in the case, I definitely took a close look at Enon, and I had actually gone to his YouTube channel and checked out the videos that he had posted. He did a lot of fire spinning and showed some stuff of him at work, working as a chef. Pretty normal stuff overall. But to a lot of people at the time, Enon was the #1 suspect up until Bryan was captured. So Enon lived right here in these two large buildings right across the road from the King Road house where the murders occurred. The interesting thing about Enon as well was he came home at about 1:30 in the morning from work, and he also had stated that he may have heard a scream around 4 a.m. Initially, when we heard that, a lot of us wrote it off because we were under the impression that the crimes occurred between 3 and 4. So when we heard 4 a.m., we just kind of thought, well, that's outside of the timeline, and probably didn't put as much focus on it as we should have. So earlier today, I had thought about Enon, and I went, where's Enon? I hadn't heard anything from this guy. I mean, he was really in the spotlight. I wanted to know what he thought, about who they caught. So I went over to Enon's YouTube page, and I noticed he hadn't posted anything since about December 23rd. I did think that was a bit strange, so I decided to take a look at an interview that Enon had done a while back where he told the story of what he did on the night that he came home from work on the night of the murders. There were two things that stood out to me while rewatching this interview. And I think these two things are going to be very important pieces during the trial. So I'm going to show you those two clips and then explain what it is that he said that I think is going to be very important in court when he testifies. This first clip is going to be Enon talking about the scream that he heard around 4 a.m. Remember, everybody, this was back when we were all still under the impression that everybody was asleep in the home. So we may not have been looking as closely to what he was saying as being valid. Nobody else had reported hearing a scream, and that's what was unusual about Enon. The other thing that jumped out at me when I watched this again is the fact that he says it was a male he heard screaming. Now that we know the victims were not asleep during the attacks, it really adds a new emphasis on the fact that he said he heard a male screaming at around 4 a.m. when we know these crimes were going on. There was also some audio going around for a while that was supposedly from the neighbor's Ring cam that had recorded the attacks, that was later debunked by that neighbor saying that that was not the audio that they had captured. We don't know for sure if that was the real audio. I do believe that there could be additional audio that the police have and are analyzing. But again, it's very interesting that Enon says he heard a male screaming back then, and then later on when that audio is released, we do hear a male screaming. Even though that audio was debunked, we don't know if that was just damage control because that audio was not supposed to have been released. So here's the video clip where he talks about that scream.
I came in and, it was like surprisingly like pretty empty that night. Like none of the houses and like that on those like two streets were having parties, which was like kind of unusual. And then I went home. Was like making some tea, just like doing some contact staff drills and like stretching. I think I played a game of League, and then I went to bed. And then as I was falling asleep, it usually takes me like 30 minutes to an hour to fall asleep. Like I don't know. I guess I dismissed like initially like one of my neighbors returning hello after me. So I heard like, a car shut, a door shut, and then like, apartment door shut, and like also like a scream. But like, that's like normal. Like I always hear like screaming almost every Saturday night. So like I didn't really like think of it. And so, but like just looking back, I was like, I wonder if like, that wasn't just like some drunk dude like screaming, like it's actually like the murder.
So very interesting to me, everybody. I do think that Enon does know a little bit more than we think at this point. Now this next clip is the one that's really interesting to me. Now pay really close attention to this clip because you're going to hear Enon tell us how he had been noticing out-of-state license plates in the area quite a bit, but then he goes on to tell us that there was a white car that he had seen in the lot with an out-of-state license plate. When I initially heard this, I thought he just said, yeah, there was a white car in the lot with an out-of-state license plate. But what he actually says is there's a white car in the lot, a lot. And then he goes on to tell us that it's the only car that he remembers that didn't seem like somebody who lived there. Now everybody, what this means is in addition to the cell phone pings, we have an eyewitness also who has been seeing that white Elantra in the lot, coming around a lot with an out-of-state license plate. Now he wasn't sure what state that was, but I do believe that it was a Pennsylvania license plate that Enon was seeing on the white Elantra. So let's take a look at that clip right now.
And I don't know, I saw like, I think it was a kind of like a deserty. It might have been, it was either like Arizona, it might even been Colorado, but I think, or like Montana. And like I saw one of those cars like parked up on the hill of our lot a lot. I'm wondering if it was a white Elantra. I'm thinking back and I can't remember. Like I don't want to say it was or not, but that was the only other car I noticed that didn't seem like someone that lives there. I don't know.
Now once again, everybody, this is before we knew about the cell phone pings and the fact that Bryan had been coming near the house multiple times in the months and weeks leading up to the murders. Everybody, I do believe that Enon is going to be a very important witness for the prosecution in establishing their probable cause for securing the warrant. This is somebody who's going to support those cell phone pings as an eyewitness who also saw that vehicle there and recognized an out-of-state license plate. And most importantly, I want to know what you all think about these findings. I love hearing everybody's comments and feedback. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you soon.